Hi everyone, Jules here from Tarot Adventures with Jules. I will be meeting with Lisa from Tarot with Lisa Kismet. Sorry, I had to think about that for a minute. And we are going to be talking about our respective tarot practices and the art of collaboration in tarot. And we're planning to share a spread that we came up with together and do some live tarot pulls. So yeah, I hope you'll stick around for anyone who is in attendance. So very exciting. Hi, Lisa. How you doing?
Hey, Jules, I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. That's great.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This is awesome. I
I'm
was
so excited to
just
be here.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that we're going to chat about our respective tarot practices and the wonderful art of tarot collaboration with that spread that we came up with and pull some cards for that maybe. And then do some live card pulls for folks that are joining us, which is super exciting. For the decks, I brought my Fortuna, my Emerald Edition, and Wild Unknown, and also the Lightsabers. So that will be really fun.
Nice. And I have the Amethyst edition of the Fortuna. I
Yeah.
also have my Light Seers and my Wild Unknown. And over creeping in the corner, I have the Gilded Tarot in case we need a third opinion.
Yes, absolutely. I love that tarot so much. It's fabulous. So I thought I'd start by asking you, I of course already know this, but I would love to ask you, how did you get started with tarot?
Well, it's been a crazy journey getting started with tarot for me, really. I've only been reading for about 5 years, and I started reading tarot after I visited a local psychic, and she was reading cards for me. And while she was reading the cards, they were talking to me too, but I'd never had a tarot reading before. So I was like, what's going on here? I feel like I'm connecting here that I need to dig a little deeper. So I purchased the which one is it? The Fountain Tarot as my first deck, thinking, oh, it's beautiful. I love the imagery, and maybe that would be a good beginner deck. And I quickly learned that it was hard for me to read. So I
Yeah.
switched back over to reading something with the more traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. And then since then have sort of collected not as many decks as you, but have done some deck collecting and found a few favorites. But mostly my tarot practice has evolved from just learning tarot to expanding into sort of understanding how it fits with other esoterica and then reading for others, reading for friends. And I do a little bit of professional reading, but I only open my book up twice a year. So on the equinox, so there'll be one coming up in December.
Ooh, that's so exciting. Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that about your interest being piqued by visiting a psychic, because that's actually how I got started with it as well. Is I went to see a psychic in Calgary. I want to say I was 18. I think that was when I first kind of got tuned into it. I'm 43 now, so that's a ways back. But I don't think I bought my first deck. I can't even remember exactly what year it was, but it was a few years after that. I was living in Calgary, and I think it was when I was working on my master's degree. I found a little metaphysical shop in Calgary. And at that point, there were not a whole lot of options. So my first one was the Mystic Fairy Tarot, which I bought for Addie a few years ago, actually. And I started playing around with it. And of course, the day she was born, that was like huge messages that I needed to hear. And so I started dabbling in it more. And then it was really, I guess, around 2014 that I really started doing a deep dive into learning the meanings of the cards and really immersing myself in it. So it's interesting because there's some parallels in terms of our beginnings and relationship with the cards. And it was so amazing meeting you as well because we had met through the meetup group. And when I first started, I wasn't quite sure about the vibe of the group and just, but I'm glad I stuck with it because then we met. And that was what made Halifax and Nova Scotia and even now Amherst feel like home. And I'm so grateful for your friendship and for the connection through tarot. And we still meet every 2 weeks, and I really look forward to it. And yeah, it's really cool when you can grow your practice with someone else. It's really special.
Yeah, it's great to meet like-minded friends and, have a friendship blossom around such a grounded common interest. Because, as you know, we now have book club together and so many things. It's
Yeah,
more than just us, reading and exploring tarot together. It's so much more than that.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, absolutely. It's been a great been a great fortune for us to meet.
Yes.
I also felt the same way about the group. It's like, I'm not sure this vibe is the way, this isn't really serving me the way I would want to be served in my practice.
Yeah.
And then I met you, and it was like, oh, we don't need the group.
Yeah. We still kept it up for a while pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, and then we went online, and our
Yeah.
group slowly dwindled a little bit. But I don't know, it still feels like that expansive Three of Cups energy, though, like being able to connect in community over shared interests, whether it's tarot or spiritual practices or book club. Like even with our book club, I feel like we were talking yesterday, there's that shared interest in spirituality and exploring that
Mhm.
aspect of ourselves. So that becomes this common thread, whether it's focused on the artist's way or whether it's focused on tarot or whatever else. It's really kind of magical how that happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I super love our bi-weekly, since you've left town and you're out in a smaller town now, I really enjoy that we get to meet through Zoom every couple of weeks. It's not quite the same as being in person, but I love reading for you and having you read for me because I feel like getting a reading from another tarotist is so much more impactful than
Mhm.
the readings that I'll do for myself. I tend to gloss over things or get distracted or not really dig in as deeply as I might if I'm reading for someone else or if I'm having a reading. It's definitely got that extra zhuzh.
Yes, absolutely. Gideon's making himself heard, so he's just coming to say hello.
Oh, he's a sweet pie.
Yes, he is. He wants to be the center of attention, so sorry about the distraction there.
No
Um,
worries.
and he likes to get involved in my tarot practice too. I've started laying out my cards on the dining room table because the lighting is a lot better than where I have my desk currently. And invariably, as soon as I set out the cloth, he's flopping on top of it.
Nice. He
Usually
wants
black,
to pull
black
cards for you.
with with white fur, Yeah.
Right on.
So
Maybe
yeah, he's quite
that's
into it as well. Yeah.
mm,
So
no.
how did you like it's interesting because I had the Mystic Fairy Tarot for years and then I had bought the Steampunk Tarot and at that point in my practice I was like, oh, this is a bit dark for me. And now I look at some of my other decks and I'm like, yeah, no. It's just dipping the surface. But the deck that I really started exploring tarot with was actually the Wild Unknown. And so this is always going to have a soft spot for me, which is really interesting because it's kind of alludes to RWS, but as it's not a clone or anything else that gets with the nature imagery and everything. It's very different. But I really like for a couple of years, this was the only deck I used along with the animal spirit. And it was really interesting learning tarot through this lens and then going from there to RWS. So how did the Wild Unknown come on your radar and into your practice?
Actually, I experienced it in person. I also participated in a smaller live group. It was a class, I think, that was happening at one of the little shops downtown. Somebody was running the class, and she had one of the students brought the Wild Unknown, and I think I had my like Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith tin with me, and so my cards were very familiar. And she had the Wild Unknown deck, which to me was so different than what I was used to seeing that I was instantly drawn to it. And
Mhm.
so that was, yes, I actually watched someone read with it and then was inspired. I find that happens. Unfortunately, I watch your deck flip throughs quite a bit and then I'm inspired to buy new decks all the time, but I resist. I'm very good at withholding. Now, I am actually, and I think you are too, waiting for the release of the new Kickstarter from the Tarot Over the Everlasting Day,
Yeah,
which is created in conjunction with an AI, which
yeah,
is something that I find so mysterious that I can't wait to get my hands on that deck. But yeah, I kind of I I sometimes I'll go ahead and check into all of the imagery on a deck before I buy, but I'm sort of just an impulsive deck buyer.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, if the deck is calling me and if I sleep on it and it's still calling me, then I'll go seek it out. But the first deck that I actually learned to read with was the Gilded Tarot, and so
okay.
this one is a clone, an RWS clone. But what I liked a lot about this deck was it was really clear imagery, and it was also it was modern colors,
Mhm,
but also sort of traditional imagery but
mhm.
not as simplistic as Pamela Coleman Smith's art,
Yeah,
and which is gorgeous and lovely and wonderful. But for me, I wanted something uh, just a little more modern, I guess. I guess
yeah,
that's what I was seeking, but I didn't want it to be like I also have the Everyday Witch.
Yeah.
And that one is very cartoony and modern, but I wanted something that felt a little more mature. So this was the first, this was the deck, this was deck number two. Oh, there's the devil. This is
Ooh.
me wanting to buy tarot decks. Um, but yeah, this deck was my second deck, and this is the one I really learned on. I learned to understand the suits and the interaction and the major arcana and just all of the aspects of tarot. I started to explore with that deck.
Uh,
So was Wild Unknown your learning deck?
yeah, I mean, because I'd kind of dabbled before that, and then when I feel like I had all this time where I was kind of dabbling in tarot and like picking it up and putting it down and having this kind of interaction with it. But it was really when I picked up this copy, and it was so interesting because with tarot decks, now if I know the creator or am familiar with their work, then I will jump on something more quickly than I would have before. Like it used to be that I would need to look at every single card in the deck before I would buy it to make sure that it was okay. And like this one for the wands has a lot of snake imagery, and I have a snake phobia that's pretty deeply ingrained. So when a friend recommended it to me, very dear friend, and I saw her copy and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then I stopped in a shop in Victoria and there was a copy of this and I flipped through it and I was like, oh no, too many snakes. And I think too, like there's definitely energy that comes with decks, and especially something that's in a public space like that a lot of people are touching. It can kind of it just had really like adverse energy for me. And then I got together with her and I didn't mention that experience. And I flipped through her deck and it was completely different. And I realized, okay, it's not the deck, it's the energy around that particular one. So I bought my own copy and started working with it. And it's actually really therapeutic. Like, I don't know if you've confronted any fears or phobias through imagery and tarot, but I don't know if it's like exposure therapy or what it was, but it actually really helped me with that a lot, just looking at the images in the deck. But yeah, this was my like first and foremost like intensive learning deck for sure. Yeah.
Nice. And so when did you first start creating your own spreads in tarot?
Um, it was a few years ago. I think like I had been in the tarot closet, so to speak, for quite a few years because that was like even talking to my aunt, she's like, "Oh no, that's the devil's work. You can't mention the word tarot around me." And I was like, "Okay." Like my family's extended family is Catholic, and I wasn't raised that way, but there's certain mentalities I think and stereotypes around tarot that can be scary, I think. So I kept it really close to my chest. I might share the odd card, but it wasn't something I was really open with. And then November 2019, I cut ties with all my health and wellness stuff and started this account. And that was really my foray into committing to it on a daily basis and building community and everything else. And that was when I really started creating spreads for myself. Um, and it's been a really interesting process. And so much of it is very intuitive, like whatever, like the spread that we came up with was off the cuff when we were meeting in, and that's how I find it is a lot of the time with me. Or if there's something like I did one for kind of seasonal depression last year around winter time because it was something that I was dealing with. And yeah, it's been really interesting integrating that into my practice for sure. How about you?
I just don't like traditional spreads. In fact, I don't even like spreads sometimes. I would prefer
Yeah.
to just talk to the cards and have like a conversation back and forth and let each card tell me what it means and in
Yeah.
context of what I'm thinking of next. So
Mhm.
sometimes free form really does work for me. But generally, I think shortly after I started reading tarot, I started creating my own spreads just because the questions that I was digging into were more specific than, the Celtic cross places or any of the spreads that I would find online. It's like, oh, somebody else made these up, so I can do the same. And then
Yeah.
I started getting probably better feedback because I knew exactly what I was looking for instead of trying to make my question or idea fit into a specific theme. So, which is why I tend to default to spreads similar to the one that we're going to share today,
Yeah.
where the spread positions, the questions are very open. Like one of
Mhm.
my go-tos, as you know, is stop, start, continue. And so it's like an advice spread that just kind of pushes you, lets you know some areas of energy to investigate or to repel or to proceed with. And so spreads like that, and my daily spread as well is like, what should I think about? What do I need to know? What's my secret weapon? And there's a fourth card and I can't think of it right now because of course we're live and I can't think of it right now. It'll pop into my head in a minute because I haven't been doing, that's the other thing. I wax and wane with my daily practice. I don't feel like I need tarot in my life every day. My
Mhm.
day, my life is pretty routine, and having the tarot make me think about deeper issues sometimes feels just a little unnecessary. So
Mhm.
I tend to let those go. And then I've been doing a 3 card lately, which is a reveal, expand, and helper. So that's just
Yeah.
for me to kind of dig in and figure out something that's like, what have I not really been giving enough attention to? What's something I should be thinking about? And how can I
Mhm.
dig deeper on that? And that one sort of came about from our experience with blending cards, because
Yeah.
to me, it was
Yeah.
like, I like that idea of putting the two energies of one card together and just
Mhm.
feeling what that does, because it creates either a real flow or it creates some sort of conflict and you can get a different sort of read. So I often even hesitate from using a single card for a
Mhm.
single placement within a spread, just because I do want to get just a little more sense of the dynamicness of that question or that placement.
Absolutely. I feel like tarot functions best for me when it's in conversation. Like my daily reflection spread has 4 cards because for a couple of years I just pulled 1 card a day, and it was a great way to learn the meaning of that card and see how it played out. But I feel like it's so much more interesting when there's a full conversation and things are working together and you see how one thing reflects the other. And it's still uncanny to me how much each of the cards integrate in just that four card spread, right? Like it's not oftentimes the same themes will be woven through, or there'll be something highlighted that reflects back on something else, and it's really amazing. Oh, and what's your drink of choice today?
Um, Hydrogen dioxide.
Ooh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I've got some water with me here as well because I'm trying really hard to focus on getting enough water in every day. But I made some oolong tea that I'm drinking as well, which is
Right
awesome.
on. Right, no, it's dihydrogen oxide. Dihydrogen oxide. Two H's, one O. Yeah, it's just water. It's really warm today. I was drinking a hot beverage earlier. I had a double bergamot Earl Grey on the go, but it's
Ooh,
so warm and sunny here, and strangely so for November. And my room has, you can see I've closed the curtains because it's got windows on all sides, and it's just beating in the heat. So I opted for water.
yeah, no, that's a good call. We went over to Cranewood on Main in Sackville earlier, Dominic and I, for a little coffee date because we have our car rental, and we could have sat outside. Like it was that balmy out, which is lovely, but also somewhat disconcerting given that it's November already.
It's true. It's true. But we'll take it, I guess.
We'll
Make
take it for sure.
make lemonade. Make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, remember this when we're in the midst of a January snowstorm.
Right on. Yeah.
So, did you want to explore the spread a little bit
Let's
together?
do it.
That would
Yeah.
be, yeah. So, do you want to maybe pull some cards for each other and see, maybe both pull some cards and see how they work together, and then we can
Yeah.
open up to readings for folks that are joining us. That might be kind of fun.
Okay, let's do that. So, how about we read for you first?
Okay, and I think I'm going to go with the Wild Unknown just because we were just talking about that.
All right. And do you want me to use the same deck or a different deck?
Whatever you feel inspired to do sounds great to me.
I'll go with the Wild Unknown. Why not?
Yeah. I haven't used this one. I tend to cycle through. I've accumulated. I remember having a conversation with you early days on like this very small box and a selection of just a few decks, and I was like, this is all I need. I don't need any more tarot decks than this. And look at me now.
I bet you can't even tell me how many tarot decks you own right now.
It's over 100 for sure. Although I have been bringing some into calling corners to the ones that I'm not using as much. Okay, that's enough, sir. He's flopping on my lap and has decided to get into attack mode. So I'm going to
Right.
put him. He's so affectionate. It's really sweet. Okay, so yeah, so I usually cycle through, and this is coming up for Sagittarius season. I used to do it by month, and now I'm shifting with each astrological season because I find a lot of the energy of the decks. Like I'm working with a lot of shadow work decks right now, like Algoliath and True Black, and it's been kind of interesting shifting it and looking at the energy of the season, and it's yeah, I'm really enjoying that approach. So this one's coming out for Sagittarius. It's that explorative travel energy that seems to be
Nice.
talking to these cards. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. So,
So are we reading any kind of theme or are we just doing general?
um, maybe we'll pull 4 cards for this spread and explore it and see what comes up.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I just we'll be sharing a graphic for this spread later on today as well for anyone who wants to try it on their own. Um, But yeah, I just did like a straight up four cards across. I find with the stop, start, continue, and clarifier, I usually do three and then the fourth up top as like an
Mhm.
overarching. Yeah, so in terms of what to release, it's the Father or King of Cups. Um, this one's interesting. I think of this as the head and heart balance card. It's like usually comes up when I'm having trouble getting out of my head and grounding myself. So I think, yeah, releasing some of that chaotic anxiety energy that's been coming up is really helpful, and trying to find a way to kind of ground myself in what's right in front of me, or heart-based energy, and feeling into things intuitively rather than getting stuck in the cognitive processing.
Hmm. And so to blend with that one, I've drawn the Ace of
Mhm.
Wands. And so we're in speaking about what to release then, uh, maybe there's just this sense of being less spontaneous with your decisions and allowing yourself to wait it out a little bit and see where the next step would take you if you didn't take action.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a sense of urgency that comes with the wands too that is sometimes super helpful and sometimes not so helpful depending on where you're at.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's really interesting. Um, what to move towards, and it's a Nine of Wands. And I feel like
Mm.
this feels to me like the endurance card. Like the end is in sight, but you just got to keep going. It's like the end of that marathon where, you've got a few more miles left and you just need to kind of persevere and keep going. So it can be easy sometimes to feel overwhelmed and feel like, maybe it's time to put something aside, but maybe it's a matter of, like with that wands, moving forward in different ways or taking a more leisurely pace rather than feeling like it needs to be a dead sprint in the last little bit.
Right, right. So you're then moving towards that. And it's interesting because just a few cards away from that one, we have the Father
Yeah,
of Wands. This is a very wandsy reading for you.
absolutely.
So, with the sense of blending these, then if we have that sense of completion and fulfillment, then you can take that action and use it. It will become available to you as something to put in your toolbox towards personal fulfillment and action. So yeah, by allowing yourself those slow, steady steps, it'll become more integrated and more future oriented as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What to make peace with, another wands card, Five of Wands.
Oh,
Is the conflict card. Often there's people facing off with, batons, or sometimes in animal decks, there's animals fighting and all of that. And I often when this card comes up, it's like making peace with that inner critic, right? And like
mhm.
that, you know, censure that so many of us have in our heads where, we can be our own worst critics, and making peace with choices and moving on. Like Dominic is my partner is so good at looking at things rationally, and if he makes mistakes, he doesn't beat himself up over it. He's just like, okay,
Mhm.
well, I made the mistake, I'll learn from it and move on. And I could definitely stand to use more of that energy and kind of ease some of that conflict for sure.
So that card, interestingly, lately, I've been looking at that one as when you're organizing your closet and you have
Yeah.
everything spread all over the room.
Mhm.
It's the energy is gonna you can contain it, but right now it's sort of in disarray. So I have also for you make peace with strength. And so just maybe allowing that, you can stand steady in the midst of those types of situations where it might feel like disarray, it might feel like conflict, but if you just, hold on to what you feel is important and, use a delicate energy towards direction, then that won't feel so, you won't feel caught up in that Five of
Mhm.
Wands. You can manage to be separate from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And that's so interesting because the something else for me is the strength card.
Ah.
And I think we had added the something else because so often I find with three card spreads, they're fabulous. I love them, but I'm left wanting just a little kind of something, a little something to finish the meal of tarot with,
Yeah.
like that little sweetness or cup of, you know, cappuccino or espresso or something. So yeah,
Hmm.
the overarching theme, I've got the Father of Cups, so that's, getting out of my head and grounding myself in my heart, that Nine of Wands, keeping going with it, but maybe approaching it in different ways, resolving conflict for myself, and then, you know, staying strong through all of it and reaching out to support systems as needed. And, I feel like there's strength and vulnerability in asking for help as well. And I feel like that's something we don't really focus enough on as a society. Like there's kind of this idea that you have to do it all yourself, but that's not really true. And it's
Hmm.
important with this.
My wrap up too. Mine was like resist that urge
Yeah.
to rush forward, but then there's something else that came with it. Now I have the Son of Pentacles, so this is really very much like just to slow down and observe, and take the time that you need to make those plans gradually, and observing how the small changes are affecting. Like I feel like coming up on we're now solidly into mid autumn and
Mhm.
looking towards fall, winter,
Mhm.
this is a really good time to just count all of your blessings and collect
Mhm.
all of the things you need for winter, and just really not rush, because nothing is going to happen too quickly in the next little while. We have to just appreciate the moments and be in the
Mhm.
now, so that everything can unfold as it will, and with less effort. By stopping the flow of energy, we can then redirect it in the way that works the best for us after we've had a chance to look it over. So I love that card for you. I love the idea of just taking that step back and observing, and letting some things go like around you, and not owning them quite so much.
I love it so much. Yeah, that card has come up a lot in the last little while. It's so interesting when you have cards that are your companion for a period of time and like working with that energy and it keeps surfacing again and what lessons you can take from that. I'm a reforming type A, so that Knight of Pentacles slow but steady is very, very useful. Oh, Carrie, yay, yay, good to see you. It's amazing. Okay, well, let's pull a few cards for you for this spread too. That would be
All right,
awesome.
let's do it.
Yeah, I find it really interesting too to card pulls to pull cards with another person because it's fascinating to me to see how cards integrate together. From
Mhm.
in this case, we're using the same deck, but how is what you pull slightly different from what someone else pulls, and how do those cards work together as well? Because it's like we were talking about earlier with that conversation in tarot. It's really interesting to look at how to build something beyond the one card reading, where you can see how the cards interact and flesh out the story that's being told through that dialogue.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. All right, four cards for me. All right, so what to release? Oh, interesting. This one came up reversed, but I guess I'll read it upright because the other ones are coming up reversed as well. I think my deck was upside down. So similarly here, I have releasing the world. So I've heard this message has really come at me a few times lately, which is really just to release the that big expectational goal. Like it doesn't have to be all at once. It can be small steps. Just releasing that need to be all or nothing, and releasing that need to really focus on huge goals. The baby steps are probably more important than the whole thing. This also reminds me of a cell wall, like the way the little colors all point in from the edges of this mandala. And so to me, it's like almost a reminder that it's like in order to build an organism, we need to have so many small components. So why would I expect that a plan or a goal or a project that I'm going to initiate is just going to be one and done, ready just like that? I'm gonna have to be patient and break it into steps, and don't really focus on the end goal. Just take the time to enjoy the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it because what I got for you is the Hermit card. And I adore this take on the Hermit with the turtle in its shell. And of course, the traditional lantern light is above it.
Mhm.
And I know we've talked about this for sure, but it's like releasing some of that Hermit energy. Like, I think if there was one card that would encapsulate the last couple of years, it would definitely be the Hermit. And, we were both talking about the need to get out and to engage with other people and socialize and find those connections and kind of come out of the shell that we've all been experiencing in the last few years. So I love that comes with the world card because it reflects the end of that cycle and the opening up to experiencing new things and new ways of looking at it and ending one cycle and moving into the next. And it's lovely to see how those two things play together.
Yeah, I'm ready to release the hermit. I'm ready to find new inspiration outside of me.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's
Excuse me. All right, so next one is what to move towards, and I have a page of cups.
ooh,
So I love page energy. I love that studious energy. So for me, this page of cups, it represents just allowing myself to feel my feelings without needing to judge them. Just
yeah.
looking at the feelings, being curious about them, figuring out what I want to feel even, and moving in the direction of that, not rather than letting things, rather than reacting, I can respond and just building in that sense of, um, yeah, just of being curious about my own feelings.
Absolutely. And I love that rainbow that's coming out from the front of the little
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this deck. It's very black and white, but then it also has these little splashes of color.
the splashes of color are so lovely. When I see that card, I often think of like the ugly duckling story too, that process of evolution and growth and
Mhm.
personal expression and finding the beauty in things that you hadn't necessarily seen as beautiful before, which is, yeah, just specific to this deck, but that kind of opened up my ways of seeing it. It's really great. Yeah, for you, I've got the Four of Pentacles. Of course, the fours are all about setting foundations, and Pentacles are all about abundance mindset and mentality. So, creating a sense of abundance for yourself through that exploration of your creativity and your inner exploration and figuring out what lights you up.
That's great. Yeah, I love that idea of taking this card on that one, which, can
Mhm.
be foundational. It's really
Yeah.
giving you that chance to get grounded
Mhm.
with emotion, which is something that sometimes I probably don't I'm a swordsy girl. I like to think and analyze and dissect. So sometimes when it comes to things like cups, I'm like, okay, well, I often associate this more with like intuitive side of things. But the idea of grounding emotions and using that Four of Pentacles as a foundation, I think is a nice one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I have this one is what to make peace with, and I have the Six of I think it's wands. Is this wands or is it swords? Yeah, there's stuff growing out of it. These ones kind of catch me sometimes. That's Six of Wands, is it?
I think I think so. Yeah, I think it might be swords actually, because it looks like there's a handle. And I think with a rainbow, if I remember correctly, I think that the
Oh
association with
yeah.
that would be
Right. It probably is swords. I'm not sure what the Six of Wands is in this deck. Actually, I'll look in the guidebook. That will tell
yeah,
me for sure which card I just drew.
that's
Daughter of Swords, Nine of Swords. Yeah, it's the Six of Swords. It is.
yeah.
All right. So the saying to make peace with the Six of Swords. Um, yeah, I guess make peace with the fact that this is a journey that I'm on, and the journey is taking me somewhere, and it's not going to be always pretty, but there's going to be light at the end of it, and hanging on for that process of self-rescue or new what's the word I'm looking for? Like new routines and creating a new set of goals or a new forward energy. So yeah, so I think that's again kind of reflective of my sometimes desire to get to the end. I have to make peace with the fact that everything is a process and it's not going to be instantaneous.
Absolutely. Well, I got the Hierophant, which is really interesting because to me, it feels like in tandem with that Six of Swords, it's like, okay, well, I've had these experiences. So what can I learn from it? How can that help me evolve and grow and move forward in ways that are new and innovative and
Mhm.
help deepen my understanding of myself and the world around me?
Nice. All right, and
Yes.
then last of all, something else for me is the Nine of Wands.
Mm,
So same as you had that one in your move towards card. And
yeah.
so I think this one just for me is just a reminder of being steadfast and, holding the line and making sure that I'm um, you know, disciplined and using my wisdom and past experiences to act on my own and achieve success. So yeah, that's definitely a good final message.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got the Queen of Cups for that. So it's like to me it feels like there's a lot to be said for setting those goals and sticking to it with determination and also finding some ease and some space to care for yourself in the process and find some of that
Mhm.
energy. And in this particular deck, it's really interesting because with the Mother Goose, Kim Kranz in the guidebook, I believe, references the fact that mother geese can be very aggressive when they feel threatened. which is
Right.
also the flip side, of course, of the Queen of Cups. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of interesting. So, there's a sense of protecting your peace and your space and what you're carving out for yourself as well.
Yeah, it's true. Thank you. Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, it started off with releasing that need to be being big picture motivated, and it
Mhm.
finished off with a reminder that, there's steps along the way that need to be
Mhm.
taken, and your reminder there to go easy on myself and not
Yeah,
be too not be too hard on me in the process.
absolutely.
Well, that was great. Yeah, I love that spread. And as you said, we'll share the imagery on our accounts. Too bad we can't do that at the same time as we're in here, but Instagram doesn't let us do live streams and use the
No,
account at the same time.
I'm still figuring out how to do that with Zoom. I think it's a little more possible on that format, but yeah.
Right.
So did you want to do some live readings with this deck, or do you want to use Fortuna for that? What do you feel like?
Well, this deck got warmed up. We could stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great.
Yeah. So we have a couple people here in our live stream. So if anybody would like a reading, you can put uh, a note to us in the chat, and we'll pull each one card. You'll get two cards, one from Jules and one from me.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a card pull, just go ahead and let us know.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, yeah, I like it when a deck gets warmed up and you're still feeling the energy of a deck. Sometimes switching decks mid-session can feel um, a little uh,
Sure.
jarring, I guess is the word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How about we do each a card pull for
Yeah.
a general reading for anyone who might be watching this, and then
Yeah.
we'll check for Boucher Design Shop. We'll do a reading for them as soon as we're done with this one.
Awesome. Yeah, it's Carrie. Definitely. We'll pull some cards for your job stuff after this. That's wonderful. Okay, so one card general for everyone in attendance.
Yeah.
I got the Father of Cups again. So
Okay.
it's I feel like in the fall, it's really easy to get in your head a lot, right? I find like
Mm,
things shifting, getting back into school, like I'm suspecting I'm not the only one who's dealing with elevated anxiety. General state of the world is a little chaotic at the moment as well. So it's like finding those practices that help ground you and get you centered in yourself more than what's going on in your head, but also what's immediately in front of me right now. What can I actually actively deal with as opposed to doom scrolling or following along with the news that often deals with things that aren't in your immediate control. Um,
mhm.
yeah, and finding those ways to, I feel like this card speaks to nurturing all aspects of yourself, right? Head and heart, bringing everything into synchronicity and balance. It almost feels
Mhm.
like a bit of a temperance message if you're looking at the major arcana, like creating that alignment between those two things.
I like it. And so I have drawn the Six of Wands for this.
Oh,
And
nice.
so this is definitely in conjunction with what you're saying here is that there's a chance to shine individually if we look towards our own personal goals and our own aspirations, those things by living according to those desires and really allowing ourselves to sink into our personal connection with those, it'll allow us to rise above the noise, and we can even lead by example. In this case, we can start to be creating happiness for those around us and giving that sense of just affirmation. So I love the color. This is my favorite. This
Yeah.
teal is my favorite color in the world. Yeah, I love green blues. And
Yeah,
so there's tons of opportunity for people to just experience that. Um, almost
absolutely.
almost like what's the victory that comes from being authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for Carrie, did you want to do the spread that we were focusing on? We can go
Let's do
straight
it.
to
Let's give her a full four-card
yeah,
reading. And she was the
we can
first
look
one to
at
speak up.
it. Yes, absolutely. And we can look at it through the lens of job stuff. But yeah, focusing on what to release, what to move towards, what to make peace with, and then a nice clue of something else.
Right. So this was related to work.
Yes.
Carrie.
Oh, I love it. Okay, awesome.
Mm.
So for my what to release, I got the Ten of Wands. And to me, this reflects that feeling of heaviness and that feeling of too muchness and being weighed down by what you're currently navigating in your work life. So maybe looking into other options, looking at ways to delegate, looking at ways to find more balance for yourself in terms of what you're dealing with at the moment, because it feels like a very heavy energy and there's a need to release, like find a release valve. Often with the Ten of Wands, it almost has like pressure cooker energy for me, where things are building and building and building, and there needs to be that release. And often
Mhm.
in a lot of decks, there's someone carrying a really heavy load and feeling kind of weighed down by it. Um, yeah, so finding ways to resolve some of that, either by reaching out or finding coping mechanisms or, looking into other options as well.
Right, and to blend with that one of maybe the feeling of burden and overload, I've got the strength card. So maybe what you need to do here is be standing your ground and, maybe not aggressively moving in any particular direction, but just allowing that personal empowerment and that sense of agency to be your director as opposed to being pushed around with the
Mhm.
flowing tides of things outside your control.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this follows so beautifully. The card that I got for what to move towards is the Ace of Pentacles. And I
Mm.
love the potential of the aces. It's like planting seeds for future growth, figuring out what it is you really want and need. And with the pentacles, of course, it's all resources, it's day-to-day life. It's like grounding yourself in your material environment, finding ways to take care of yourself as well. So there's a sense that, you're dealing with the feelings of overwhelm and being weighed down, but from that comes the potential for something new to grow or something new to evolve, whether it's a new perspective on what you're dealing with currently or something brand new, full stop. There's a
Mhm.
lot of potential for that new, innovative, fresh start energy to come into play.
And I also drew Pentacles for what to move towards for Carrie. And I love the energy of the Six of Pentacles because it's a very collaborative card. It's a lot about volunteer work or, being able to give and receive. So in the sense that if you're thinking about what to move towards in your work and career, it's like where do you feel that you're able to give your gifts and where do you feel like you can be received in yeah, just in that energy and like you get what you give is kind of this card that I'm feeling. So sometimes it's allowing yourself to receive because you're already a giver, and sometimes it's like, well, if I want to receive this, how can I give it first to someone else?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's that strong kind of, as much as the fours are foundational, I feel like pentacles are too. It's like setting that baseline for future growth in both cases through
Hmm.
these for future and also through that give and take reciprocity and relationship in the work that you're doing as well, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love that.
So making
Um,
peace with.
yeah, I ended up with the Knight of Cups.
Hmm.
Gideon found a spring. It's that I see this as the hopeless romantic card, right? It's somebody who dashes in with their heart in their sleeve, and they're not necessarily thinking it all through, but just going in full of passion and full of enthusiasm. And that's a wonderful quality to have. And sometimes it's good to make peace with those instincts and maybe find ways to ground yourself as you're navigating all of that. Like, it would be wonderful if we lived in a world where we could just follow our passions and have everything come together, but sometimes there's planning and groundwork and setting seeds that needs to happen before you can take that leap into the unknown. I feel like there's some fool energy with this Knight of Cups a little bit, right? There's that sense of impetuousness and like forward momentum, which is true for all the knights, but this one especially. And so, lead with your heart, lead with passion, figure out what takes you forward, and then also work at setting those seeds and, setting the foundation for future success, for sure.
Hmm. And for me to make peace with, I have justice. And so, this is that sense of like we'll cut to the heart of the situation, and things will be come out on the fair side. So it's a matter of analyzing, what seems fair, and accepting that there will be some compromise, perhaps, or some give and take. And so, in conjunction with your Knight of Cups, is it Knight? You have the Knight, is
Yes.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So yeah, in conjunction with that Knight of Cups, in the sense that there will be feelings involved, but in the end, some compromise or some level of fairness will emerge. And it's hard to, it's not always easy to make peace with that.
mhm.
Sometimes we feel there is injustice, but
Yeah.
if we wait for it, it will become fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's something else. Four of Wands, and this is such a beautiful, say that 10 times fast, beautiful celebration energy in this card. Like there's so much fire happening in the background, and it's cause for celebration. So these shifts that are coming in terms of your work, figuring out that sense of weight and heaviness and resolving some of that, setting those seeds for future growth, leading with your heart and tempering that with a little bit of planning. There's so much to celebrate in all of that because there's so much potential moving forward for something new to evolve and for new opportunities to arise that you hadn't even contemplated before. Like even in terms of how we're talking to our kids about future careers and stuff, like you never know what's coming around the bend. There could be something that you've never thought of or, even considered, but could end up being a really good option. So it's staying open to that as well and celebrating the progress that you've made so far as well.
Yeah, I think that is important to celebrate the things worth celebrating, and we have the Father of
Mhm.
Cups or the King of Cups in that situation in the side of it. I think that really supports the sense of celebrating the successes and taking the time to feel, and using that deep set of emotional guides that are there. Like everyone knows deep down what they're striving for, or what they would like the outcome to be, and that King of Cups, he is able to direct his emotional energy towards creating the thing that he desires. He sometimes doesn't put all his cards on the table, but he knows deep down what it is that he wants. So,
Mhm.
that's something else from here is, not just to celebrate, but also to really navigate according to your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that foundational energy too with the fours. So it works beautifully with the Ace of Pentacles too, with like setting that foundation for future growth and making the decisions that,
Hmm.
lift you up and bring those ideas of hope and desire and what it is you truly want into play with those decisions moving forward.
Hmm.
So I hope
Hmm.
that helps, Carrie. So
Yeah, it's
is
always
anyone
interesting.
else up for a reading?
Yes, if
Please
you're here in the
let us
chat and you would like us to pull a card for you, you can just let us know in the chat what you would like us to read on for you during this
know.
live. We probably have about 10 minutes left, so
Absolutely.
and Carrie says it's absolutely right on. Thank you for that beautiful reading and your insights. Our
Oh, it was
pleasure.
a pleasure. Yeah, our pleasure. Absolutely. So, in terms of quick question while we wait for the request, what is your ritual for clearing your deck? Like in between readings, I often will tap on the top. If I'm bringing a new deck out that I haven't used for a little while, then I'll usually go through and touch each of the cards and go through and reconnect. What's your approach with that?
I always make sure that when I replace the cards in the deck, that I don't put them all together at the top. I'll split the deck and lay the cards in so they're not still with each other. And
Yeah.
then I riffle shuffle twice and knock on the deck.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Yeah, this particular deck has really nice cardstock for the riffle shuffling. I tend to do that more with playing cards than I do with tarot cards, partly to preserve them and then also just because a lot can be really thick and harder to do.
Mhm.
I'm enjoying riffle shuffling this today. It's pretty fun.
It is pretty fun.
Yeah. So if we don't have any questions, we could look at some energy for the month ahead. Maybe do
Let's do
that
it.
stop, start, continue, and then a little clarifier or something to keep in mind.
Awesome. And that will probably wrap us up then, because we'll have
Yeah,
10 minutes and that should take 10 minutes. We'll be
absolutely.
really good if we can squeeze it all in 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like this stop, start, continue. I feel like more so than a lot of other spreads I've looked at, it's very proactive. Like it gives you something to work with and something to act on. Okay, so what do I need to be cautious of or stop right now? What can I start engaging with? How can I continue with what I'm already doing? Like it feels very proactive and very, yeah, tangible in a way that
Hmm.
a lot of spreads aren't. So I really appreciate you introducing me to that because it's been super helpful.
Excellent. I'm glad. Okay. I've got some interesting cards here. All right, so I'll go first since you've been going first this whole time. So for the stop card, this is a general reading for the month ahead.
Mhm.
I've got the Eight of Wands. There's so many wands today. It's a wandsy day. This sense of Eight of Wands, there's this sense of hurry. It's like it's going to happen fast, and
Mhm.
things are moving quickly. But the idea with this card is to just stop. Pushing for more, stop acting quickly, just time your actions carefully instead of feeling that impatience of moving forward.
Absolutely. Um, so for me here, for the stop, I have the Four of Wands, again with the Wands, which is so interesting because while I don't see any of the cards in tarot as inherently good or bad, the four is usually cause for celebration.
Hmm.
It has a lot of, celebratory positive energy. And so in a stop position, it feels like a cautionary, don't go overboard with that, still make sure that your bills are paid and that things are taken care of. And with that Eight of Wands, make sure that you're not rushing ahead so fast that those foundational things that you need to care for in your day-to-day life aren't being pushed to the wayside in the process.
That's right. Yeah, don't overlook those important things on your journey. All right, so that was stop, and then for start, I've drawn the Seven of Wands. So many wands today.
Ooh, yeah.
We seriously did shuffle the entire deck.
I know.
Um,
Double deck.
So this seven is this one really we can see this single flame alit in amidst several others that are not and it's really about self-reflection
Mhm.
and integrity, taking the high road. If you
Yeah.
feel like you're in a situation where maybe you have to give in, or maybe you're going to get an advantage. But either
Mhm.
way, you have to maybe assess where your loyalties stand
Yeah.
and thinking about what your ideal outcome is and just standing up
Mhm.
for your beliefs. So I really
Mhm.
feel like this card is encouraging you to be autonomous, regardless of what might be going on around you.
Absolutely. And I pulled the Daughter of Cups, which that's the page, and it's all about emotions and relationship and creativity and expression. And when I see this card, as much as with the Six of Cups, it feels like an inner child focus, right? So it's like getting back to the core essence of who is it that you were before the world told you who you're supposed to be. How can you reconnect with those aspects of yourself so that you can shine and you can allow yourself to express creatively without worrying about what all those other sticks are doing, right? But finding that sense of innocence and joy and pursuing something for the sake of it, not because of anybody else's, feedback or estimation. I mean, who cares what they think? Just go for what sparks joy for you. You don't need to show anybody if you don't want to. But it's that sense of exploration and creativity that comes into play.
It's true. I love how these two cards blend together because while we're standing our ground or taking the high road, we do really need to use that foundation of, like you say, who were you before society told you who you were? Really be authentic in those choices and not let yourself get pushed around by outside influences.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then so continue. Interesting here. I got the Hierophant for continue.
I love it.
So this is like, there's so many religious connotations that come with the Hierophant, but I've sort of come to just associate it with like what are my own rules and boundaries, and what are the things that I've established for myself, and how do I see the world, and what are my expectations, like just that traditional creation of rules. So I think in many ways the Hierophant is representative of truly living your life according to the rules that you've been given that you
Hmm.
choose to continue, not that you're imposed by. Because sometimes this Hierophant feels a little preachy, but
Yeah.
I really like to think of it as being my own North Star, and like this is what I've chosen as my foundation, and this is what I'll move forward with because it's authentically part of me, not, you know, I've shed away the things that don't, like, even the way this crow is cawing, he's speaking his truth. So
Yeah.
there's that sense of you know, continuing to speak your truth and incorporate the things into your practice that
Yeah.
really mean a lot to you.
Absolutely. And I pulled another major, the Empress. And I love how this works with that interpretation of the Hierophant because it's like tuning into what it is you know to be true. What inner wisdom have you gained? What are your instincts telling you through your creative expression that also showed up with that Page of Cups and
Hmm.
through connection with what's true for you? How can you speak up? How can you express yourself in a way that is centered in your heart and your own inner knowledge? And how can you articulate that into the world in a way that feels good to you and feels nurturing and supportive?
So I'm feeling like the energy that for the month ahead, I feel like there is this sense of needing to stand your ground and feeling like maybe things are moving faster than you would like them to, and really
Mhm.
just making sure there's some stability in your forward motion, but always being authentic to your deepest feelings and your inner guide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's
Mhm.
that sense of, foundations and making sure that that's all in place, exploring creativity and personal expression in a way that
Mhm.
feels authentic to you without worrying about outside opinion, and then finding that personal expression and creativity and expressing it in a way that feels really nurturing and really supportive.
So what's also really interesting is that the three cards that you pulled for this have a
Mhm.
sense of like positive outcome and
Mhm.
really like a beautiful energy. And
Mhm.
mine have drawn sort of that opposite side of things, like to
Mhm.
balance it. There's that
Mhm.
sense of if you're not careful, you might get
Yeah,
swept away in other, you know, in other forces. So I love
yeah,
that they balance each other. And, you know, like I drew the 8, you drew the 4. So like the 4 is 8 is a multiple of a 4, and then I drew the 7 of wands, and you drew the cups. So while I might have this fiery sense of, you know, needing to
mhm,
take the high road, you're floating on the surface of the water and allowing your feelings to direct you. And while I've
yeah,
drawn the Hierophant, which is really sort of a building block, you've drawn the High Priestess, which is very, you know, open to or is it Empress? Which one
Empress,
is it?
yeah.
Empress, which is very open to that creative energy, that sense of
Mhm.
empowerment and true knowledge of who you are by how you feel. I love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Oh, that's so
Nice.
great. Wonderful. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you and chat tarot and pull some cards. And yeah, that was amazing.
I
And for
agree.
anyone who was not able to join us live, this will be saved to my IGTV and YouTube. So you can tune in. And if you're tuning in after the date and the message resonates, then it is absolutely meant for
All
you.
good for you. That's right. And make sure you check out Jules's website. She has an awesome website, tarotadventureswithjules.com, and join her mailing list because got lots of juicy goodies in her mailing list for everyone. And stay tuned for when we open up our books for personal readings. We don't do it very often, and sometimes we don't give you enough notice, but we'll try to be better about that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. That was an absolute
Awesome.
pleasure.
Thanks, Jules. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.